Meeting of August 7th for the City of Minnetrista. Before we get started, I'm going to ask number one that all of you here this evening, if you have electronic devices, please turn them off, put them on airplane mode or on silent so we don't disrupt the meeting. And then I'd also like you to join me in Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So welcome everyone, and to those of you watching on YouTube later on. So I'm going to start with some introductions. I'm going to start on that end, a little different this time. To my left on the very end, we have with us this evening our Communications and HR Coordinator, Cassandra Tabor, our Public Works Director, Gary Peters, our City Engineer with WSB is Paul Hornby, and then we have council members, Shannon Bruce, Mike Molitor, Pam Mortensen, Patricia Thole. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the Mayor, and then to my right I have our City Administrator, Mike Baroni, our Finance Director, Brian Grimm, Community Development Director, David Abel, our City Attorney, Ron Beatty with Kennedy and Graven, and then we also have Paul Falls, who is our Chief of Police. So with that, approval of our agenda, are there any additions or changes to the agenda as presented in the packet? Staff none, council none. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Bruce and seconded by Ms. Thole. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. So tonight we have no special presentations, and we also have nobody signed up under persons to be heard. So we'll move on to our consent agenda items. They consist of approving our work session meeting minutes from June 19th, approving our regular meeting minutes from June 19th, approved our closed session meeting minutes from June 19th, approve our work session meeting minutes from July 17th, approve our regular meeting minutes from July 17th, approve our claims, and a resolution to approve a variance at 350 Rolling Hills Drive, and accept the resignation of Adam Hagholtz, Public Works Maintenance Worker, and a resolution to authorize city officials and staff to solicit contributions for events or purposes determined to foster positive relationships between law enforcement and the community. That would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Is there a motion to approve those consent agenda items?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Mr. Molitor. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Okay. Next, public hearings, we have none, so we'll move on to our business items. So we have approval of a preliminary plat at 1185 County Road 110 North.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This property is located at 1185 County Road 110 North. As you may recall, there is a 6-lot, single-family lot subdivision being proposed here. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting several months ago and also submitted a sketch concept plan review, which you as council and our other commissions had the opportunity to look through. I think a majority of the council also attended that neighborhood meeting that the applicant held regarding this proposal. Now, as you'll see with the proposed plat that's on the screen and part of your packet, there have been revisions made as a result of all the comments that have been had during those neighborhood meetings and the concept sketch plan review, which gets you to the plat that's being proposed, the 6 single-family residential lots that's on the screen. You can see what the applicant's doing is keeping the existing access point off County Road 110. They're proposing to keep the existing single-family house and detached accessory structure on that lot. You can see from the county review memo that they did approve that access point remaining because it is still just one single-family house that is being accessed off of that. They do have a condition there with the right-of-way. They are asking for a little bit additional right-of-way because it is a platting process, which we're asking the applicant to comply with. Their other access point, which is an existing access point now off of Sunnyfield Road for the proposed Lot 2 on the corner, and then the remaining access points would be off of Marina Drive for the additional four other lots, excuse me, that would access off of Marina Drive for that. So again, it is 6 units. You're looking at a density of 2.02 units per acre. That's calculating out the land that's being taken for county right-of-way. So they are right at within the density range that's required for the R1 zoning standards. The lots do conform to our minimum size and width standards. The Planning Commission had an opportunity to review this item at their July 24th meeting, where they did hold a public hearing. There were 2 people that spoke at that meeting. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, but they did have 2 conditions or recommendations they added as part of their motion. One of them that what they were looking at is access for these 2 lots be moved down in front of Langwood, and essentially would be creating a shared driveway type scenario. The other thing that generated a lot of discussion was the stormwater pond and the idea or concept of putting that in a separate outlot from a future maintenance standpoint. And staff's, all good recommendations and good discussion points that were brought up by the Planning Commission. Certainly, typically with any new subdivision, that is what we do with stormwater ponds, is put them in outlots. However, given this scenario and this situation, those 2 recommendations changed this plat significantly. And staff would not recommend that council follow through with those recommendations. One of the things that was brought up during the concept review in the neighborhood meeting was to avoid shared driveways and avoid that scenario. And so just having the one on Sunnyfield Road is reasonable. There is one there now. Moving that might be better from a safety standpoint, but now you have two single-family residents that are accessing off of that. So it certainly changes that, and we also, one of the things you may recall was we wanted to limit the access to Sunnyfield Road. So this again is just intensifying that situation. The other recommendation with the stormwater pond, that significantly changes Lot 3 and how that has access then, and potentially creates a variance type scenario for that lot, or brings that lot into a non-conforming situation. Essentially, you're going to kick access then off out into Sunnyfield Road, and you start playing around with lot widths in that scenario. So as you can see, from our standpoint, from staff standpoint, a recommendation from us is that they set up a stormwater maintenance agreement, which all of the properties within this would be responsible for the maintenance of it. We'd set it up essentially just like we would any other stormwater pond, except for the fact that it would not be an outlot. You can see also there's a condition that the city would establish a stormwater taxing district, just like we do with any other subdivision. So there would be plenty of ways and mechanisms in which we can ensure that that stormwater pond is going to be maintained, and if needed, the city could actually step in and intervene and make sure it was maintained, and go to those property owners within that development, just like we would any of our other developments in the city. So it's for that reason that staff does recommend approval of the plat without the Planning Commission's recommendations, but with the conditions that are outlined in your staff report and resolution. The one note I want to make, that actually information that came in today regarding one of the conditions regarding the variance for the existing house. We've taken that condition off upon further research with Mr. Beatty. We determined it wasn't necessary because it is the county that's taking it for right-of-way purposes. They're creating the non-conforming situation. It didn't seem, it does not necessary to require that variance at this time. So that condition, if the council adopts the resolution tonight, that condition's been removed from the one that would actually be executed or signed this evening. So I just wanted to make that note to the council this evening. With that, like I said, there was 2 people present during the public hearing. I know we did have Mr. Molitor was at the Planning Commission, so if there's any questions, specific questions about the Planning Commission meeting, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those. With that, staff will stand for questions.
Okay. I have one question, Mr. Beatty. So if this stormwater pond is not an outlot, rather it's part of Lot 3. What would the city be able to legally access that if they ever had to clean the stormwater pond? Since
Yes.
it's private property then?
Well, Madam Mayor, Council, good point. We would still require an easement over the property, over the stormwater pond, and whatever other portions of Lot 3 were necessary to gain access. So there wouldn't really be any difference in the city's ability to get in and do the work.
So then another question, maybe this came up at the Planning Commission meeting. Why wouldn't it be an outlot and then an easement for that driveway for Lot 3 would be created?
Well, the question about the outlot is one, as David said, that we debated. That's typically what we require because the outlot will be owned by an HOA and it won't be on somebody's property. I think from a marketing standpoint, and this is of course something the developer has to deal with, I'm not sure whether that's a negative for people to buy a piece of property that has a stormwater pond that not only serves them but the rest of the neighborhood. Nonetheless, that's the way this has been set up. The issue that we debated is, should we force them to create an HOA, which we could, with the likely result, in my opinion, that the HOA would cease functioning in fairly short order. And I say that because there are only 6 lots. That's kind of a prescription right there for a problem. And there are not any other improvements for the HOA to take care of. So you'd end up, in my opinion, creating an HOA whose only responsibility was to take care of a pond that's not likely to need anything for a number of years. And so I think we'd be perhaps fooling ourselves that the HOA was going to be helpful when we needed it. You know, we're going to, at least the recommendation is that we create a storm sewer tax district here, just like we've done other places. This might actually be a place, this might be the first place where we actually go in and utilize it. And I say that because with an HOA, you've at least got a mechanism for the neighbors to get organized and try to maintain the ponds. Without an HOA, it's going to require 6 individuals to be knowledgeable about this, to coordinate things, to figure out how they're going to finance it. I think that's probably unlikely. And so while we will have a stormwater maintenance agreement similar to what we do, which will impose on them the legal obligation to maintain it, I just suspect long-term that this might actually be a case where the city has to go in and utilize the storm sewer tax district.
So again, why wouldn't we do an outlot with a driveway easement over it?
Well, an outlot's going to go tax forfeit.
Okay.
Because it's not going to be, who's going to own it? You know, the issue with an outlot
Okay.
typically,
That's what I needed to know. Yeah.
it's owned by an HOA.
Okay.
And in this case, if there, I'm sorry, I didn't finish my thought and didn't answer your question. If there is no HOA, there's nobody to own the outlot.
I see.
And
Okay.
and I think that's likely to mean that it's going to go tax forfeit.
Okay. But still, the 6 property owners would still, regardless of whether the parcel is tax forfeited, would still be responsible to maintain it. I mean,
Right.
Okay.
Right. The stormwater maintenance agreement that we'll have in this case will be a variation of the one that we normally have. The standard one is imposes the obligation on the developer to construct the pond. That will be the same. And then it imposes an obligation on the HOA as the successor in interest to the developer to maintain the pond. And they're as we've talked before, they're supposed to be collecting monies against the day that something is going to happen. That obligation will be imposed generally on the 6 properties. The agreement will be recorded against all of those properties. So if you buy a lot, you'll see that as an obligation. It's just that I think what will be missing is the convenient mechanism of an HOA to actually accomplish that. And so unless the neighbors somehow organize themselves outside of an HOA,
Okay.
I just think that that's probably going to be a problem.
Okay.
In addition to that, Madam Mayor and Council, all of those logistical things, staff looked long and hard at as to how you'd create one and what that does to the plat, and there really just isn't an easy way of doing it. That makes sense. It really just, in addition to all the logistical things that Mr. Beatty's bringing up, from just a plat standpoint, it causes confusion and complications. That it's really complicating the matter even more, and the plat in the scenario in which doesn't make sense, and that's why staff concluded that it really didn't make sense in this scenario.
Okay. And then, Mr. Molitor, or does anybody have questions of staff? Otherwise, I'm going to have you weigh in and kind of inform us on any other issues that the Planning Commission brought up. Okay, Mr. Molitor?
I think, when those of us who were at the neighborhood meeting back in the winter heard the initial proposal of, I believe it was 9 houses, and I think there was various concerns of certain things that were somewhat minor, but I think the message I heard loud and clear was to reduce the density, and this proposal brings it down by 1/3, down to actually that's the lowest we can go. So I think that that objective was achieved, and I think with this plat being put together without the need for variance reflects what our intentions are via the city code, and that's basically what I believe we heard at the Planning Commission as well. There was, as Mr. Abel mentioned, there was some conversation regarding the driveways, and that was not a consensus on that conversation. It was agreed to, but as was brought up in the meeting, there was some difficulties, and hence those were taken out. I don't think that, even if taking those out, I don't think that would change the recommendation that the Planning Commission had. I think it would still be recommended.
Okay. Other questions? If not, I have some more. Mr. Hornby, so a couple things, and then Mr. Abel. One, the driveway for Lot 2, is that, I mean, I know there's an existing driveway there now that's used occasionally. It's not their main driveway. Their main driveway they use off of County Road 110. So changing this from an occasional use now to a daily use, how safe is that? And does it meet our standards?
Well, typically in a brand new subdivision where we don't, for instance, have a county road, a situation like this is more of a fill-in type of a situation, but we would discourage that kind of an access that close to the corner. Since there is already one there, I don't know what the use was prior to. I suspect that with a home that was there having a secondary access, they probably used that one when they couldn't get out on the county road, or when time allotted and get out. The main thing I don't like about it is close to the intersection, and it also there's a turn lane there. When you're trying to get out, you wouldn't be able to go left in certain periods of the day. So it's not ideal, but it is an existing access point, and with one single-family home connected to it, I don't see it as a significant issue.
Okay. Then Mr. Abel, for you, Lot 1, is that large enough to subdivide?
Yeah, I think actually, Madam Mayor and Council, that might have been talked about briefly at the Planning Commission meeting as well. Yes, given the dimensions that they're proposing right now, it would be possible to subdivide that into two lots. However, as you see from the county's letter, they're not going to allow for another access point off of County Road 110, so that obviously could cause a problem. It talks about even possibly having an access easement over one of the other lots if that were to ever happen in the future.
And then the park dedication fee. It's based on 5 lots, not 6, because the house is remaining?
That's correct. Yes.
For how long?
The way that our park dedication ordinance is written, if there is a house on one of the lots that's being created as part of a subdivision, that lot does not count then towards the park dedication.
Okay. So, in the future, see, I don't know, I just see that, I don't like lot 2 being that small. I know that corner, and it's like, that is tiny. That is really tiny. I'd really like, and it looks like there might be some wiggle room and some, to create, I know it may meet all the minimums, but boy, it might be better to move that lot line a little bit between 1 and 2. Was there, what did the planning commission say? Anything?
We didn't, I don't recall any discussion about moving the lot line between 1 and 2. I think if we look, and if I remember correctly, I think the house as it sits now as a setback off the lot line is compliant. I don't know how much closer you could get without being out of compliance, David.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it'd be a 15-foot side yard setback. I don't have, I mean, there is wiggle room. There is some wiggle room there. If, regarding that lot line, I don't know exactly how much. I guess I don't know, maybe the applicant would be willing to speak to that. But I think there is some wiggle room. I don't know how much exactly, but there's, I mean, it's the side yard setback that would be applied there would be 15 feet. And I know there's certainly at least that there now. Beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I will add with the planning commission that we did talk about is because of how the site is laid out with County Road on one side, Main Street on the other, and kind of surrounded by Marina Drive, it does present a lot of challenges that just about any configuration is going to require some compromise. And that again goes to my point about and looking at how it all comes together in light of not needing variances. It seemed to reflect the compromise that would be necessary to make this happen. To moving the lot line, that potentially could be one of the areas of wiggle room. I don't.
I mean, if you move the lot line, or even just straighten it out or something, rather than have it angled like that, and moved it within the house is going to be raised. I mean, it's not going to, stay very long. I can guarantee you that.
Well, I mean, I think that was discussed. I mean, we talked a little bit about that. I think the point being is I hate to say it, but that's speculation on our part, and we're here to evaluate the proposal as
Sure.
it's presented. And I think that's how we have to look at it. I mean, if it was raised, yeah, definitely you could move the lot line without a variance. But I think as the proposal stands, if the house stays, then that's the way the proposal is presented.
Right. Well, we could ask the developer to move the lot line and see what it looks like.
For what reason?
Well, my concern is
It all
also,
conforms now.
yeah,
I understand your concern for the
right.
future.
And for the future, my concern is subdividing lot 1.
Well, I think that was one of the concerns. Well, it was one of the bigger concerns we talked about at the planning commission meeting, and there was a desire to make sure that lot 1 does not get subdivided in the future. And while we came to the conclusion that there's no way to guarantee anything, the most likely scenario to make sure it doesn't be subdivided is what we see here, because you're limited to one access point off of 110. If the county ever changes their philosophy of allowing more access points, that could potentially allow a subdivision. But if we want to keep it at one lot, this is the closest we get to locking that in.
So does the county make it clear that it's one access point regardless of how many homes, or is it just one home, one access point?
They used the term in their letter, further developed, which we asked for clarification. That basically means subdivided.
Okay, and then would there be other possibilities for additional, easements through some of the other lots? I mean, like so the county says, okay, you can only have, you know, are the other lots large enough where you could provide an easement for access?
Yes.
So it could be subdivided.
Yes.
Okay.
At a later point,
Yeah.
then you'd have to have, of course, the agreement of the other property owner.
Yeah, but he owns all of it now.
Okay, well, it depends on when you're asking at what point, if you're talking at the next 6 months or the next 6 years. I mean, I think...
Well, as soon as it's final platted, he can put any easements on any of the lots that he would like. Well, let me ask Mr. Beatty, is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Council, that is correct.
Okay.
I mean, as long as the developer owns all the property, he can put those easements, and which I think really focuses the question that has come up here about access. This is a difficult piece of property to develop. You've got a county road where the county, I think, has been pretty insistent, and I believe them, that they're not going to allow a second access point. So if Lot 1 were subdivided, I don't think the second home would access off of that. The alternative would be someplace else, and that would require an easement over another property and or a joint shared driveway, which the city does have some discretion over. And I think one of the things that needs to be focused on is, do you want another driveway to come out someplace, and if so, where? Because I think Lot 1 is going to be subdivided.
I do too. I do too.
Well, in order to do that, you'd have to move the existing access point on 110, or else have neither one of them access 110. You'd have to have 2 shared driveways in that case. Because if you split it right down the middle, the one that has the house wouldn't have an access point, because the access point is much farther north.
Well, if it's going to be subdivided, and there'd be no reason to make Lot 2 so small unless you want to keep an option open to subdivide Lot 1. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see what this would look like, where the driveway, if this were subdivided, if Lot 1 were subdivided, what would it look like? I mean, I think that's a fair question.
And or, Madam Mayor, back to your original point or comment that I said was a good question for the applicant are they willing to look at moving that lot line in between lot 1 and 2?
Okay.
Is another, I think, question to be asked.
Okay. So, Mr. Fretham, you have a question posed in front of you. I think there's a number of issues here that we're going to go with. Number 1, as Mr. Hornby pointed out, the driveway coming out to Sunnyfield. I don't know that we're real comfortable with that, but there is no other alternative. And so therefore we may have to do that. But the question here is moving that lot line for number 2 further to the north, creating a little bit larger lot, and then maybe, if you will, guaranteeing the city that we don't have to deal with a new plat in the future.
Great questions. And we've spent a lot of time on this layout and a number of other layouts, and I also just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to hear our application. There's a couple thoughts that go into this layout that's there, and you can see that the driveway comes in, but it also comes up beside the house, which doesn't show there, is also a porch. So if we move that home over, that lot line over, that porch, the front entry or side entry of the home is compromised because it's no longer going to be meeting your side yard setback. So that line, yeah, it's feasible to move it, but it starts to compromise other things. Also,
Like the porch.
with the entrance to the home, yeah. The porch is the main entrance to the home.
And you're keeping the home.
We're keeping the home.
How long?
Well, as long as I own it. The home is recently had a new foundation put under it. It's in good condition. It has a lot of nice millwork in it. It's a little bit dated, but I've had contractors look at it, and I think it's worth a lot more as a home than it is a tear down. And so our intentions, and I think most would look at it and say, we want to keep the house and do a little bit of work to it.
And how far could that lot line be moved before you would infringe on the 15-foot setback? And is that a side yard setback since that's the main entrance, or would that be?
No, the front would be off County Road 1.
Okay.
And Matt, just quick, Madam Mayor, I guess the other question, I mean, if you left the point here to maintain your 15, could this point be pivoted up?
Exactly.
And then vice versa up here, could you move that? Would be a couple ideas that I would toss out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's not appealing to us from a developer standpoint because it's compromising the value of lot 1, but it's not benefiting lot 2 or lot 6. And so we have a conforming plat that works in every way. Why would we bastardize the plat or bastardize lot 1?
I don't think you would be.
We do.
Okay. Council. I mean, I'd like to see what it would look like. I don't think you're going to bastardize it. I think
we could draw a line on there and show you, but I don't know what you mean. We'd like to see what it would look like.
Well, you'd have, as Mr. Abel pointed out, a couple different options. And
we didn't like those options.
Okay. Okay.
My question would be, you know, certainly we want to be forward-thinking, but as long as a builder or developer, as long as the lots comply with the various city ordinances, to what degree do we have a say to request that they change it? I mean, we can ask, but if it complies.
Madam Mayor and Council, I think you are asking. I think you're getting the answer. I think that's a tough question because Mr. Fretham is correct. The plat appears to be in compliance. I think what you're really looking at is how comfortable are you with the prospect of there being 7 properties on this, 7 lots on this property as opposed to 1. If lot 1 is left the way it is, which appears to be double the minimum requirements, then it will be subject to a subdivision request, and there won't be any variances required, presumably, to allow that. So it would presumably be allowed. The only issue would be access. Right. I think, as we said before, the county is unlikely to allow access off of 110. So an alternative access would have to be provided. You have some discretion, the council has some discretion over shared driveways, but that would presumably be the limit. And so I think it really comes down to a question of density. 6 or 7 lots is within the density range allowed in this subdivision.
I think we like the 6 lots, and we understand this is a very difficult parcel, and I think you've met all of the requirements with that exception that I'm concerned about the future subdivision. So, and then what would that do to this plat, and how would it look, and so on and so forth. That's so then let me ask you, are you not planning on subdividing this?
My intentions are just to be able to sell it as a home with a double lot, but
A double lot?
that's what it is.
No, it's a single lot.
Well, it meets all the criteria for a double lot.
Okay, so you do anticipate subdividing it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I just said that I anticipate selling it as a double lot, and somebody else will come here and argue with you about whether it should be split again or not. And we present it this way because it doesn't seem that the city council is prepared to provide a 7-lot subdivision. So rather than argue with you about a 7-lot, we'll make it easy for you and give you 6. But if you want us to come back, we'll do a 7-lot subdivision if that's your preference, and we will meet all your criteria for a 7-lot subdivision. But we try to make it easy for you. If you would rather not, we'll come back, do a 7.
Okay, I've weighed in.
I think if a property owner and a developer has met all the requirements and is following all the ordinances and setbacks that there are, I think trying to predict or get promises from a developer about what they're going to do in the future, what they might not do in the future, that's something to be dealt with in the future with the ordinances and the setbacks that are in place then. So I'm happy with accepting it the way it is.
Okay, Mr. Molitor?
I pretty much have to concur with those statements. It's a complying plan. Someone else wants to subdivide it, well then we'll have to deal with that at that point. That's just kind of the way it is. I think we've asked, the primary objective was to reduce the density. He has. It complies. If someone wants, someone might want to keep it as a double lot. I don't know, but that's, we can't control all that. That's going to be for a future council to decide. It might be the current city council that decides it, but that's the way it is.
Okay. Ms. Martinson?
I tend to agree with the other two, and I did go to the neighborhood meeting, and density was an issue. So I think going from the original 8 down to the 6 is a good compromise, and so I agree with the other two.
Okay.
I'm good with it how it is because it conforms to the city ordinances, and whether in the future lot number 1 became 2 lots or stayed 1 lot, as long as the 2 lots met the city ordinances, or if there was an easement required or something to that effect in the future, then I say we deal with it in the future. So.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay,
Mayor, and the developer has shown an effort in making the lots bigger and addressing the safety issues for the roads.
Okay. Any other comments or any other issues regarding the plat? Okay. So then I'm looking for a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for 1185 County Road 110 North, or the plat of Sunnyfield Edition 2.
So moved.
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Stoll and seconded by
Madam
Ms.
Mayor,
Bruce.
just want to add that we took away the condition for the variance. I just want to make sure that's part of the record that's been taken out of the resolution.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Otherwise, they must meet all other recommendations
Yep.
and criteria.
Yep.
So, okay. So is there any further discussion, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. So 4 ayes and Mayor Whalen, no. Okay, so moving on then to number business item B, and that's approve a preliminary development agreement with Mattamy Homes for Woodland Cove 3rd Edition.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. The map on your screen is the area which is classified as Woodland Cove 3rd Edition. I guess I don't know if any of you are familiar. We have done this back in 2014. We did a preliminary grading agreement with Mattamy for their phase 2, which is up in this area. Essentially, what has happened again here with their phase 3 is they're ready to get going and they want to get on site and grade. But because development activity is actually pretty abundant right now, their engineering firm and civil drawing firm that puts their plans together cannot get their plans, all of their construction documents together in a timely fashion for a full final plat application. So what we've done in the past and what we're looking for council to do again this evening is enter into basically just exactly what it is, a preliminary grading agreement with Mattamy Homes. It allows them to get out on the site and start grading essentially after, as soon as possible after this meeting and us executing the documents. We do collect securities, a letter of credit, to make sure that grading is going to be done in the fashion that's being proposed. And so this allows them to get out there and get starting with just grading work. And what you'll see in the next 4 to 6 weeks is the full, complete final plat application. Where we'll enter into a subdivision agreement, a full subdivision agreement with an additional letter of credit for all the securities for the utilities, the streets, all of those things that are going to go into the site. You can see that the city engineer has reviewed the proposed grading. They have their memo attached. We have reached to terms and agreements with the preliminary agreement that Mr. Beatty prepared. So looking for council to go ahead and adopt the resolution which enters into that preliminary grading agreement with Mattamy Homes.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
So just so I understand, we're doing this because they basically can't get their ducks in a row in a timely fashion for the normal process, which would be to do preliminary and final plat. And it sounds like it'd be another 4 to 6 weeks before they'd be at that point.
They've done, so preliminary, it's final plat only.
It's final
They've
plat.
done, yep,
Okay.
it's all been preliminary platted. I could say it more eloquently, but yes, essentially, that's in a nutshell, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any risk to the city?
Well, no, I mean, like I said, we're accepting a letter of credit. I mean, this is just like a subdivision agreement, in the sense that we'll have that, just shy of $1 million worth of a letter of credit to John and ensure that any grading work would need to get completed.
But would there be, so the grading is probably for the roads and things like that. So if they change the preliminary plat, would they have to come back for a preliminary? Or is there any talk about changing that?
There is change. There is, yeah. This is the phase I've referenced to earlier about the kind of the change in the housing that's being offered out here, going to that more villa style that we've been recently exposed to. There were about 75% townhomes being proposed originally in this phase, and they've ratcheted that back to about 50% townhomes, and they're wanting to add more of that villa style to it. But none of the changes being proposed require an amendment to the preliminary plat. We do have a master development agreement,
Right.
which allows for flexibilities.
Okay.
The main thing with that, obviously you don't want to drastically change the plat, but the main thing is the unit number is what we tie to with each of these phases.
Mhm.
We have an end goal of 1,071 units, and so we along the way want to ensure that we meet that 1,071 units. That's really the main threshold, and the city engineer has enough of the plan. The only thing they really don't have is the utilities and some of the streets. A lot of the other information they've already had, stormwater information.
But the lots don't change then? That's what I'm wondering, is if they're grading for the streets, do they reconfigure the lots or the layout or anything? Or
Well,
is it all going to stay the same?
They're grading it to what the plan that they submitted to us is. So the final plat. I mean, the grading matches their final plat application.
So the grading that would occur is not just for the streets, it's the mass grading of the site.
Right.
The subdivision. So it includes
Okay.
more than the streets. So what they'll do is they'll grade to establish their building pads and their lots, and they'll do the hold down in the streets, getting ready for the streets to go in. So that will come in the street and utility plan.
Okay, and again, I'm not, because they're changing the plan from townhomes to townhomes and villa homes, my question is, will the grading change?
It has.
Okay, so we haven't seen the plan yet, and
We
yet,
have. Engineers have. Yes.
okay, but they have to come to us for that change approval.
Madam Mayor, Council, I guess the way I'm envisioning this is effectively we are doing the development agreement in 2 steps, which we did, as David said, on one of the previous subdivisions. That's kind of their choice. It's actually the more expensive way for them to do it because I have to draft 2 agreements, but they've apparently chosen to do that. Grading is normally one of the subdivision and improvements that's authorized by the development agreement. There is when the letter of credit is calculated, that's one of the elements that's included along with streets and sewer and water and so forth. We're simply pulling that piece out and dealing with that up front. And the agreement makes it clear that the only approvals that are being given is with regard to grading, nothing else.
Okay,
and so it's their risk.
Okay.
You know,
Mhm.
in other words, they've figured out the way they want this phase to look,
Mhm.
and they've done grading, presumably, or a grading plan that reflects that. And if whatever changes aren't approved when they submit the real subdivision, that's their risk. I mean, I just don't
Okay.
see the city being at risk. We've got the letter of credit. If they don't do it, we'll do what we, you know, always have the right to do, go in, button up the site and so forth. It's just,
Okay.
I don't see this as a problem for the city.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it sounds to me like we're putting the cart before the horse, and that's what we're doing, but we're okay. So,
Well,
okay.
Mr. Abel, Mr. Abel, you may have addressed this a little bit. My concern or question would be, ultimately, originally, were there going to be 1,021 units?
71.
1,071. This changes that.
No.
No, it does not?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, excuse me, let me say, it changes the number that will go in, the number of units that will go in number 3. But they ultimately have to make that up in
Yeah.
redesigning another area and adding, so that ultimately they end up with 1,071.
Yep. Yep.
Because we're being held accountable to that.
Yep.
Yep,
We have a
okay.
net balance.
From
actually.
USA.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
net balance right now. Every phase is a slightly, every phase that's come in, there's been tweaks and changes, and unit
Okay.
numbers have changed. We've been in the positive.
Okay.
They've been ahead with their unit number. And we still technically are. This unit number, I don't remember off the top of my head. It's not much of a change, but we have a master agreement, and we also
Yeah.
have a master unit number that we're following
Mhm.
throughout this whole thing because
And we're not
We-
behind at this point.
No,
so-
we're ahead.
They're at a
Okay.
net gain.
Mhm.
We're-
Yep.
yep.
All right,
Okay.
then that makes it easier too.
Okay.
I mean, all right, good.
Does this affect timing at all of the development? Is-
It helps. If anything,
It
it
helps
helps
them,
because
yeah.
they're going
It
to
would
get
help
out there doing
them.
what they need to do
Right.
sooner.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it, I just want to understand it.
Yeah, good
So,
question.
yeah, good, all right. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Otherwise, I am looking for a preliminary development agreement with Mattamy Homes for Woodland Cove, 3rd edition.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded. I'm assuming also with all of the requirements that staff put on.
Yep.
So, motion has been made by Ms. Thole and seconded by Ms. Mortensen. Further questions, discussion?
So when it comes time to final plat approval, it's kind of a rubber stamp deal.
No, that's what they were
I mean,
saying.
the risk is on the developer.
Yeah,
I
right.
think, I just want to say, I concur with your concern that we're putting the cart in front of the horse. Obviously, we're covered. It's not ideal, but I understand why.
Yeah, okay. All right, with that then, any other comments? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Then we have a quote to replace playground equipment, accept a quote to replace playground equipment in Douglas Park. I believe that's Mr. Peters.
I'll start
All right,
out, Madam
okay.
Mayor and Council. Gary may need to chime in at some point here, as he helped orchestrate and get the quotes for this project and knows firsthand what the condition of the park is. But Douglas Park is located out on Tuxedo Road, was originally developed back in '87. The current playground equipment, it's dated back to 1997. Our city's parks, trails, and open space plan, we do have a maintenance schedule, which I've shown to the council here before. It calls out this playground to be replaced, the equipment to be replaced in 2017. The current playground equipment and the swing do not meet ADA standards. As part of our annual park review back in 2016, Gary and Nick presented this to our Parks Commission, where they did recommend to council that they replace the equipment. They recommended a budget of $35,000, and that again was based on quotes and Gary working with different vendors to figure out what it would cost to replace the equipment. So that recommendation did get forwarded on to council as part of the 2017 CIP, so that was included as part of the budget for the parks, the CIP for the parks back in 2016. So as you can see, we received 2 quotes, Flagship and then Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground. Staff's recommending that you go with the quote for Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground for the $27,618. What you'd be utilizing is the park dedication funds for this expenditure, again, because that again was part of the budgeting process and the CIP for the park fund back in 2016. So with that, I stand for any questions, and like I said, if you have other specific questions, Gary might be the guy to go to.
Okay, questions? Gary, so I'm assuming Public Works does routine inspections and things like that, and
Correct.
This has been inspected and determined that there's some problems or issues with the equipment that's there.
The swing out there was changed a number of years ago. It's supposed to be toddler swings, and they put an adult swing, or how do I phrase it? Elementary swing is what they call them on the one side, which has caused the imbalance in that, so it was not designed for that extra weight. So it has tilted to the one side. The recommendation was if we do not replace it, that it gets cut down below ground surface and covered up and removed, because it is a hazard. There's a lot of broken pieces that are starting to occur on the actual play system itself, and parts are no longer available for it. It's just there's some certain steps on there that are no longer comply with the new statutes as deemed, it's unsafe for kids because of where their head can go and where they can slip through and stuff like that. So, this is just going to be the first of many to come down the road over the next, 5 to 10 years that we're going to start replacing. So this was a good starting point, because this one is
one of the oldest ones?
Well, it's in bad shape.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think it's the oldest one, but it is in bad shape. So, and when I first started here, that was not used very much. But we've noticed a big increase in there out there now, that there are more younger kids out there using it. They go out there and do stuff. So, I mean, the dynamics have changed out there. So it's gone from probably being heavily used to not used. Now we're back to being heavily used again out there. So it is good to see, at least. So.
Yeah, it is. All right.
I just have a quick question. On the two quotes we got, there's a pretty big difference, like between the two. Are we, and one includes, the one that you're recommending includes shredded rubber. Is there something we're not getting with the one that you're looking at?
I don't know. We sent them the same dimensions. This is what we had to work with. They both came out, both met them. I said, this is what we had to work with. This is what we're looking for to match what's out there for that age level and group. The swings, pretty much have to stay where they're at. They're on a size and a shape, basically, of what they can fit in there. So they both had what they could work with. I think it comes down to the type of equipment they use and who their supplier is and how much of a markup they put on stuff, I'm assuming. So, because I mean, I don't know if David included the pictures, but they were fairly similar to what they're going to do, because there is only so much you can do in that space. So I think it comes down to, size of companies and what they can do with, getting better pricing from their suppliers, I suppose. I can't speak for them, but the one thing we did ask of both was to do the rubber mulch, and this is, like I say, not the shredded tires. This is actual good rubber virgin rubber play safe mulch. It's not like they say ground tires and that type of stuff. So this is actually play safe. It's environmentally friendly. That kids can chew on. It's not going to get the chemicals out of it like you would a tire.
Hopefully they won't.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean but we asked both of them, and the real big difference, which I was surprised, is the one only did wood engineered fiber. They did not submit another bid. I emailed them several times, and I don't know if they're busy or whatever, but it was hard to find quotes for these too, because the playground companies are so busy. I did contact 4 different companies. The only 2 I got. So, but for the pricing wise, I can't tell you.
But it is under the estimated or budgeted amount of
Correct.
35, so that's good. So, all right, good.
I do have a question. On page 120 of the packet, this is where I think you've used this in other presentations before. There's a maintenance schedule here, and you've got things trimmed or taken off that have happened. The last line of that says, if the large cottonwood trees remain a problem for the park, they should be removed before the playground equipment and fence are updated. I haven't had a chance to drive out there. Is that still an issue?
The cottonwood trees have been gone since I've been here. They were gone a number of years ago, I'm assuming.
Yep. In my time here, that does need to be changed in the maintenance schedule, because that was an issue causing lots of problems, and we did have those removed.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay. So that would be also that 2011 tree work, 10,000.
Yep.
Okay. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, are we going to accept or approve the replacement playground equipment in Douglas Park, awarding the contract to Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Mr. Molitor. Further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. So next on our agenda is a contract with the Morris Leatherman Company for the 2017 survey and community survey. So we had this discussion. We had Mr. Leatherman here and talked to the council during our work session. And I asked Mr. Baroni if he could give us kind of a synopsis, a quick kind of overview of what was discussed and what the city will be doing. Of course, we're not going to spend 40 minutes on it like we did in our work session, but a lot of questions were asked, good questions.
No, we will not spend 40 minutes on it. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, tonight before you is a resolution to approve Morris Leatherman for a community survey. It would be a not to exceed dollar amount of $20,000. I will bring back a formal contract, scope of services, etc. at the August 21st, but this will keep the ball rolling, so to speak. Obviously, in my staff report, I kind of laid out some of the main topic areas that we hope to cover in the community survey, and Mr. Leatherman did a good job of kind of walking the council through that survey and kind of highlighting those issues, whether it's services for public safety, parks, recycling, communications, whatever it might be. Obviously, I believe that there's some really good positive outcomes that will happen with by doing this survey. You'll be able to assess the satisfaction of our constituents and identify issues of importance that will help you and guide you in the in your work on the council to try to find out what kind of public policies that we should be pursuing. I think some of them are, as stated by one of our council members, are pretty obvious, but I think this really just gives you a real good baseline and also a comparison back to our 2011 survey, because there is going to be some common questions that were asked then that asked on, so we can track if city staff is doing better or worse or whatever the case may be on how we're delivering our services. So with that, I will stand for questions, but the motion before you is just to approve the not to exceed amount of $20,000 for the community survey to Morris Leatherman.
Okay. Any comments or questions? I know we're not all in agreement, but
and just for the record, I'd like it noted, the reason for that I'm not in agreement is I'm not convinced of the cost benefit coming from the survey, and I'm not convinced about its effectiveness or the validity of the information that we're going to get from it. So spending $20,000 for the survey is just something I can't support, and that's why I'm going to be voting no.
Sure. Okay. I think, yeah, I think some others feel differently, and we think that there's a lot of value to it. Validity, I've looked into a number of things, and I think it will be a valid survey. I think we'll get a real good gauge from the survey. So with that, do we have a motion, or anybody else? I'm looking for a motion to approve the hire of the Morris Leatherman Company to conduct our community survey with an amount not to exceed $20,000. And we'll see the contract come back to us at our next meeting.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Ms. Thole. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to address one point that was made during the work session about being in touch with the residents' concerns as our elected officials. I do agree with that comment. However, I think this will give us an opportunity to, if nothing else, at least validate what our beliefs are, or possibly correct them. So I think
that's correct. Yeah.
Because I think all of us, and myself included, feel as though we're in touch with our residents, but I think this gives us an opportunity to validate that or correct that. So I think there's some, I just wanted to address that comment before, because I think there is some value in that.
Sure.
You know, I might think I know what's going on, but I might not. And so this will help validate that. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right.
Yeah.
Just want to
Good point. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so now I'll call the question. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
4-1, and Ms. Bruce descending. Thank you. So we have a, next one, we have the approval, offer of employment for a customer service and communications assistant position. As you know, Joni retired July 18th, and this is to fill that position, and it's been a little change, but I'll let Ms. Tabor tell you all about it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Exactly as you mentioned, I was going to start there. So this is, as you recall, a replacement for Joni Sandquist, who retired on July 18th. This is also a reflection of us reassessing that past role and giving opportunity for growth for 2 other internal candidates. So before you is a request to approve a conditional offer of employment for Ms. Anisha Mueller, a full-time customer service and communications assistant. We began this process in mid-June, shortly after, or about in alignment with Joni retiring. We had a record 33 applications. We have not seen application levels like that in a very long time for any position. So that was exciting. We closed that on July 7th. We had 2 panels consisting of 3 staff members each, and we performed 7 initial interviews on July 26th. And we invited back 2 very strong candidates for final interviews on Tuesday, August 1st. We had a rather lengthy discussion as staff who did the interviewing and as a personnel committee as well. And we are looking to make this offer of employment to Anisha Mueller for a variety of reasons. So first, she has over 10 years of customer service experience in some major rehab facilities in the South Metro. The level of stress that she's required to handle with grace and professionalism is very high. She also comes to us with experience with scheduling as well as payment and data processing. We felt strongly that her scheduling experience will carry over to what we're needing with this growth in permit and permit processing, as well as inspection scheduling, because our inspections department, as you know, has grown and the demand on them has grown as well. So we're hoping that will allow for a fast transfer of skill. She brings a very warm and professional demeanor in her interviews. I think the personality that she was displaying is a good complement to what we have in the front as well, especially as she's the face of City Hall for residents as they're walking in. So we're confident in her ability to transfer her skills, and we're anticipating a fast learning curve for her. We did take a look as we were assessing this position, and our goal was to remain stable in what we were paying for compensation across those 3 positions. And this offer of $23 an hour leaves us with a delta, a positive delta over that, and so we're glad to stand with that as well. So the recommendation for the Personnel Committee is to approve a conditional offer of employment for Ms. Anisha Mueller as Customer Service and Communications Assistant with the City of Minnetrista with an expected start date of August 28th. Okay, well, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Okay.
I do. Last time we went through this hiring process, I made a couple of comments. I wanted to see some resumes of some people and maybe their applications, at least of some of the top picks. And I'm very disappointed to see that once again, there's nothing here. I have nothing to go on. I don't know what's so hard about that.
Well, there are some legal things, Mr. Molitor, as we dug into it. First of all, we, through our process as a Plan A city, I have to ask the council for approval for this. It's not as if we were a Plan B city and I was a city manager, I could make these hiring things. You would just be giving me my budget each year and I would just be going. So there is a bit of a difference that we essentially are talking about people here that currently have jobs at other places that aren't here yet. I need your approval in order to do that. The other item that has been a long-standing tradition here as far as vetting candidates for hires, we do have a personnel committee. And those are 2 of the 5 city council members. Then we have 3, obviously, otherwise we have a council meeting. And so I understand your concern that you're not able to physically see who these people are and what their credentials are, but I guess you're going to have to trust the fact that your other council members and your city staff are making the best decisions possible for the good of the city. I don't see a way around giving you information and that would be job application information or resume information. You start crossing over into some private data. They're not employees here yet, so I can't really give it to you. And even if they were, there are some restrictions on what data I can give you, even if people that are working here. So you would essentially be getting their names, you wouldn't get their address, you wouldn't get their phone number, you wouldn't get the companies they're working at. I mean, we'd be giving you a lot of blanked out stuff. So I can understand your frustration. It would be nice to be able to be part of that, but I have 2 people that are on the personnel committee, and that's who they are. I can't expand that without creating a city council meeting event. So yeah, is it ideal? No, but that's the rules that we have to play by. So again, I understand your frustration. You'd like to know a little bit more about these people, but I had 17 years of experience at Eden Prairie. 10 of those were doing HR. I've got somebody who works as an HR communications consultant that has many years of experience. One of my council members was an HR professional in her day, working in the private sector. So I feel like we've got this covered. I wish I could give you more information, but I just can't.
Okay, can you answer one question?
Sure.
Is she related to anyone on staff currently?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And you know, if that was the case, we probably wouldn't be able to hire.
Well, I think you could still hire. You just have to be cognizant of reporting relationships. You can't have someone reporting a relative.
Oh yeah, yeah. And believe me, that's the furthest thing from our minds to hire somebody who's a friend. I mean, we're not about that. We're trying to hire the best people we can for the jobs that we have. I'm not worried about giving somebody a job because they're related to Brian or me.
Again, I'm backed into this question because I have no information in front of me. So
I understand that.
So I have to pick a few questions that I can ask, then you can just give me yes, no answers, and I can kind of shoot in the dark from there.
No, I get that. I understand your frustration.
So that's one of them.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Maybe,
and what I'll continue.
If we could,
I apologize.
Maybe if we could just real briefly, quickly, kind of go through the process. Maybe that would also help.
I've been through a lot of hiring processes.
But it's a little different in the city because. First of all, the job description is posted, then we accept their applications and resumes. Then not just one person or 2 people, but multiple people go through those applications. So not just 1 or 2, it's, and then after they wheedle it down to, how many people did you actually interview? 7. Then they picked 2 people to come back and for a final interview, and they're interviewed again with more staff, and then they bring it to the the personnel committee meeting, and the personnel committee talks about it and finds out the background and so on, and how they not only qualified, but then how did they meld and mesh with the existing staff, and then we come to you with a recommendation. So it's But
we also do a criminal history check. We do a driver's license check. We talk with somebody who some people are actually pretty creative, but people they list as references, they'll list their friends, and it's like, I could care less who your friends are.
Right.
I want to know somebody who is your boss without having them jeopardize their current position, because if you call them and they say, I don't know,
right.
Then they're still there. So there's a lot of things that come into play here. So I wish I could just say, yep, here's the final 2 applicants, look them over, tell us what you think, but that's not the way it's going to work.
Can I weigh up on a couple things? I totally appreciate the privacy thing. And our personnel, what they have hired in the past has been excellent. I think it's a great process, and the hires that we've had in the time I've been here has been excellent. And perhaps when we start looking at changing positions again at the beginning of the year, you could be on the personnel committee and change it up at that time.
That's fine. We're not scheduled to add any more staff, but that's fine. We can discuss it at that point.
Okay.
Well, too, I hear what your concern is, and what I attempted to do here, and what I'll continue to attempt to do, not only obviously for your benefit, but for all the council members, is to elaborate as much as I am capable as to what specific skills jumped out at us during that interview process. I tried to be more thorough here than maybe I was the last time around, and attempt to do that. So I will continue to do that without crossing those boundaries that were previously
Yeah, we
mentioned.
tried to figure out a way to wordsmith some of this without saying exactly where she's working.
Yeah.
But I totally understand. I think it's also learning staff and learning the methods and the process and feeling more comfortable with it. So.
And one more question. Can you refresh my memory as to the range, or rate range for this position?
Well, I think we published the entire pay range for that particular grade, because the lower down in our pay grades you go, the narrower it is from minimum to maximum. So we published the whole range. I think it started at 19 something and went up to
Yep, it was high
25,
19 to low 15.
yeah,
Yep.
25.
you mean?
25. I
25.
apologize.
19 to 25. So
Yes, high
we
19 to low 25.
We looked at her current rate of pay, and we didn't want to obviously give her a pay decrease, but we're trying to get her pretty close to what we think she would accept, and that's what we were able to do. So it's a slight bump.
And
from the
based on
last
her
year.
experience and
Yeah.
based on her interview and her area of expertise too. I mean,
She's
it's,
got a ton of experience. It's
Yeah.
just not city experience, and that happens. That's okay. These jobs are, this is a hybrid job, so that there's not a lot of people out there we could compare it to anyway. So we were just hoping that we advertise what the job's about and the skills we need, and she met damn near all of them.
all right. Any other questions? Okay, then I do need a motion to make a conditional offer of employment for the customer service and communications assistant position.
So moved.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, a second has been made. Ms. Bruce made the motion and Ms. Mortensen seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passes 4-1 with Molitor descending. And then we move on to approve a purchase of our automatic hydrant flushers. And this is Mr. Peters again, or?
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Okay.
Council, thank you. As stated there, the Department of Health every 3 years comes through and does what's called a sanitary survey report of the city's entire water system. They starts off with about a half hour to 45-minute discussion about our maintenance processes, what we've done in the past, what's going to be happening, taking place. It involves a visit to every well site to go through each of the well houses, looking for anything that needs to get fixed, repaired, replaced. And this year also included the water treatment plants. There's very few items that were on the report. One of the big things that we run into with our system is keeping a chlorine residual in the farthest points of our system. The way to take care of that, as described in their thing, is to do looping as much as possible. These dead-end systems where they are at, makes it A, impossible now, but B, when they were put in, very spendy to put in to loop through a swamp and to make this work. So what you end up with is flushing situation. What we're proposing to do is purchase 3 automatic flushers. What these do is they connect to the hydrant. They are programmed for a certain amount of time at a certain date at a certain time, and turns the hydrant on. It lets the water run through the dead end system, clears it out, shuts it off. We propose this system as compared to sending an individual out once or twice a week to do this on a throughout the year because we are very busy other things. But when you open a hydrant, especially with the two locations that we're looking at in Games Trail and McGanzer out in Hunter's Crest, you open a hydrant up, you limit flow out in that cul-de-sac to those homes. We know when Mike is out there because we get numerous calls if there's a hydrant issue. Also involved with that, we do, Dawn sends out a text message or email alerts to let people know. We have to post signs during the day to let people know that this is taking place. You know, we do get a lot of complaints. This would alleviate that problem because we would set it up to do it at basically 1 o'clock in the morning when water use is at its minimum. People would not notice. The flushing would take place on a regular basis, which would be a scheduled set time for a set period of amount of gallons to come out. And we're doing this repeatedly throughout the summer, and you're not going to end up with doing it when it's every month where you're going to be running a lot more water to clear it out. You're just going to keep the water moving just to keep it going. So to me, it just makes sense to do it this way. I'll leave that decision to you guys. We do have 3 very long runs that we are looking at. The one is from basically Kings Point Tower out to Hunter's Crest, and the 2 farthest runs are in this Games Trail and McGanzer Drive, which are dead ends. And the newest, longest run we have is from the Sunnyfield Tower up 110 to 151, down 19 into the new Red Oak neighborhood.
Red Oak, yeah.
So that is quite the long run too, and we are having quite the difficult time. Also with the lack of usage out there right now, the amount of homes out there, so we're not getting as much usage. So in the future, hopefully this will alleviate the problem. We get more homes out there, more usage out there, and more people connected to the system. So hopefully that'll make it, you know, that we won't need this in the future. The beauty of these is if we run into problems somewhere else, these are portable. They're not a permanent system. They go on there, they do a lock, they are lockable. They're not going to be able to get stolen, but we can move them around if we need to in the future. So as the need arises, say Red Oak, we don't need it anymore, but say we extend water somewhere else and we need it there, you know, we can move it around, which is nice. So it's just basically eliminating A, time and manpower to do this, which we don't always have, so it makes it a lot longer. B, just makes it more convenient for the residents so that they don't have to worry about it. The minute you see hydrant flushing, they call. So, you know, if it happens at night, people are, you know, less likely going to be affected by it and notice it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I do have one question, or 2 actually. So it looks like you're still going to have to manually do it in the winter?
Nope, we actually discussed this with them, and there's a couple of cities that have done what we used to do in Eden Prairie and at Chanhassen when I was both there. When you flush hydrants, or actually flood rinks in the wintertime, you actually make a box around these, and it's a heater box, and it actually works very well. You put a small little heating unit in there, just a little propane heating unit, and it works perfect. We've contacted the city of Robbinsdale, who has these, and they've just built a simple insulated box, put a little bitty little heater in there, and it keeps it warm all summer long, or all winter long. The key to this is in the areas where we're going to do this, and we've picked out some great spots because it's near an open lot where there's a pond. We would put a little catch basin under this to actually pipe the water away so it's not going in the street. So the idea of this is not to let it flush onto the road where it's going to build ice, but to catch it and send it the opposite way down in through with enough slope that it drains out. So yeah, it is feasible to run them all winter long if we choose so. And we're going to have to in some areas.
Do you have to run them as frequently in the winter?
Not as frequently, no. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. Hopefully not, but you know, we can tone it down. Maybe, you know, once we figure out. It's a game. You know, once you figure out where you got to be to keep the residual, we'll know. You know, and then as it goes down, unfortunately, we may not be able to adjust it. Just keeping that residual out there is tough. The longer the run, the faster the chlorine gets eaten up out there. So.
Okay. All right.
So then we get the first call at 2 a.m. Who gets that? Gary.
Gary.
Yeah, it'll go to me.
So some resident's going to call at 2 in the morning going, hey, the hydrant's on.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's a simple little heating unit, and it's the same thing we use, and it's an easy make box. It's just, you know.
I was just talking about in general.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
when
general
you put it in
hydrant
July, all of a
flushing.
sudden it flushes at 2 a.m. and someone goes out there and freaks out that they see the thing.
And it could happen, but I mean, definitely, I think what we'd have to do with these in these neighborhoods, especially, is notify the people that this would be happening, and because now you can tell them, look, we're going to be flushing hydrants at 1 o'clock on Mondays and Thursdays, whatever it ends
I
up to
think
be.
that'd be a
You
great
can,
idea.
well, they'll know a set time, and it'll happen at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, whatever works out. So it really shouldn't bother them that much. So,
I think it'd be a good idea.
and we're not going to be running, you know, hundreds of thousands of gallons anymore. It'll be short time runs. What we're hoping just to keep the water moving through the system on these dead ends.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a resolution to purchase 3 Copperla 9700 automatic hydrant flushers for the city water distribution system in the amount of, was it $5,835?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Ms. Bruce. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Next item, we have additional purchase of trees for our tree trust sale coming up in September. Is that Mr. Abel?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As you know, we were successful, us along with the City of Mound, were successful in receiving a grant from the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District for about 490 trees that was offered to our residents. Residents could buy 2 trees at $30 a tree. That was widely successful and basically sold out in about a week. So staff inquired with the tree trust to see if there was the possibility of getting an additional 90 trees, of course with the understanding that that would not be part of the grant and that those would need to be paid for. The difference would need to be paid for by the city. The tree trust did do some checking and they heard back from their vendor, and it is possible to get an additional 90 trees. The cost associated with that, though, there are costs to get the website back up, get PayPal working again. Those are very minor, of course, but the big cost, of course, would be the trees themselves. You're looking at $6,100 to offer an additional 90 trees to residents if the council wishes to do so. We re-advertise that we've got an additional 90 trees and offer them again 2 trees per property owner at the $30 rate. The funds could be used out of the Environmental Enhancement Fund, the Environmental Enhancement Tree Replacement Fund, if you so choose to move forward with this this purchase and authorization. So I'll leave it to council for discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Abel, I'm not doing the math in my head here. As far as how many trees we'd purchase, how much it costs us, what we would charge the residents, is it a break even? Do we make a little money? Do we lose some money?
We pay $6,100. The $30 a tree is would go then to help pay for them. So it's $6,100 out of the city's
Tree fund.
So, but then does that so if we sell all 90 trees, we take in $2,700, does that reduce, do we take that, or is that?
We would know if we don't sell whatever we
Yeah, we get the money.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so if we sell all of them, our out-of-pocket cost would be $4,400.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No, it's
It's 3,000.
our portion is $6,100. The $30 is factored into the cost.
It is, okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's,
Okay.
yeah.
So it costs the city $6,100 to do it this second time, which it probably cost that the first time.
No,
2,000 because we got a grant.
we got a grant.
Oh, okay.
So
Plus the
So
ancillary
there was 3 different funding.
PayPal.
Yep, there was 3 different funding mechanisms. The first time we were successful with the grant, and then we contributed. The city contributed $2,000, and then the money that's the residents paid $30 per tree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I think you said last time that Mound didn't sell all theirs. Is that true? Did they eventually sell all theirs?
We haven't. I haven't heard as of lately. It was going a lot slower.
Okay.
I mean, there's still lots of time left too.
Is it possible that if they don't, instead of us purchasing more, can we get some of theirs?
We'd have to buy them.
Well, and then
So it costs us
the
the same.
problem is then you're getting down to the wire too, because people have to order them.
Yeah. Well, it only took a week for people to order the first batch.
Mound hasn't been presented with that. I can't imagine that they'd be very excited about it. I mean, the idea's been talked about with tree truss, so I wouldn't recommend going down that road. But
I think it was a nice thing to be able to offer our residents when we had a grant, but if it's going to cost the city $6,100, I
But
don't
it
think.
comes from the environmental fund. So it
Nonetheless, I think.
and we've had a lot of residents ask.
Well,
this is quite
of course, you can always ask. I'd
Yeah.
love to get trees at a discounted price, but it's not. I don't expect it to be the city's responsibility. Now, if they're, like I said, if it's a grant or something like that, so it would come out of the tree fund or environmental fund. Otherwise, that fund is used for trees in city parks, city properties, city.
Well, it's used at the discretion of the council as we go through our budget every year, just like we do with any of our other funds. We've had lots of discussions about what we're going to do with that money. There isn't really, as you can see per the staff report, those are the things you can use them for. Planting additional trees on public property, conducting environmental enhancement projects on public or private property, and the list goes on there in your staff report. So it's something at the discretion of council each year that you go through your budget. We as staff have cautioned council in going and making big expenses out of it because we don't see this being replenished very much in the future. Looking at future subdivisions, the land that's going to be subdivided in the future does not have a lot of trees on it. Basically, we've got Serenity, if that ever goes through, and a few small other pockets where you do have some wooded areas. But like I said, you look at other areas that along Highway 7 that are mostly agricultural land. So you're not going to have a constant replenishment or revenue stream coming in. So what we've cautioned you to think about the future and think wisely. What Gary's talked about a lot is the emerald ash borer. When that hits, it's when it hits, it's not if. And those types of things that are really going to change the landscape of the community. So that's what we've cautioned council to think about. This obviously is a small dollar amount, but that's the time and place where you think about what you want to do with it for the next year. Again, thinking long range into the future.
Is it weird? Did we use this fund for replacing some of those trees over at Lyle Park? Or is that Lyle Park?
Well, we used it
there
for
were some
Gillespie Park. We used it.
Okay. Okay.
And in North Lisle too, we did do some planting
we used
there.
some in there, correct? Yep.
Yeah, that one time we went out and walked and.
Yep.
Did
Well, I
some
think
ribbon
we had some
cutting.
scheduled for this year too, didn't we?
That's what we did this year, Lyle Park.
Right.
Lyle Park.
Well, this fall we're doing them.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, this fall you're going to do it, yeah. Okay.
I agree with Councilmember Thole. I think when there was grant money available, that's why I supported doing this before. But given that there isn't any grant money available and it's going to cost the city money to do this, I don't think it falls into that category of things that the city just doesn't have business doing, providing trees to private individuals that want to buy things. I mean, that's a private sector thing that nurseries can do. I think it's just something the city isn't tasked to do, and I don't support spending the money on it.
And adding on to that, what Mr. Peters said, or what Mr. Abel said regarding the emerald ash and all those sorts of things, that not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and that we want to be considerate of how we spend that money.
Okay.
I agree as well. Private use without a grant, I think we should pass on that.
Okay. Well, we don't need any motion or anything because it was, and it's at least 3, so we can move on. So approve the purchase of a forklift for our Public Works Department. Is that Mr. Peters or Mr. Brony or?
I can start, Mike, if you want to take over. Or?
No, go ahead.
When I first started working, Madam Mayor, Council, when I first started working here, the Public Works new storage building was just at a kind of a storage building for trucks, and they had stuff scattered everywhere on the floor. One of the first things I did was purchase some pallet racking in there to get stuff off the floor, put items away. We've expanded quite a bit since then, buying more pallet racking to get equipment, attachments and stuff out of the way to make room in there. Over the past years, we've been using our Bobcat with forks on it to place items on and off the racks. It's not really designed for that. What a Bobcat with forks is designed for is unloading lower trailers, transporting stuff from on the ground level from one place to another without doing a lot of overhead lifting. What happened was we were removing a pallet. One of the guys was removing a pallet from the top rack. It caught on the pallet racking. He couldn't quite see because of the visibility aspect of it. The pallet started sliding out, or the fork slid out with the pallet still there, so it was kind of in limbo. He did happen to catch it, see it, reposition and pull it down. They brought it to me. I said, go to the safety committee. They went to the safety committee, and a job hazard analysis was directed to be, which was performed. And two things came out of it. And yes, there is a site problem, and with that, and a spotter is needed for doing overhead lifting. Two problems with that is there's not a spotter there all the time, and if something were to happen, can that spotter move fast enough to get out of the way of a falling object? So looking at that, the second person's a great thing, but it can turn out to be bad. So we kind of determined that a forklift should be purchased to use to doing this. We have quite a bit of racking out there now, and inside and out, and it's a lot of storage, a lot of overhead stuff. So it was looked at for what we need about 5,000 pound forklift. We looked at new ones, kind of pricing them out anywhere from 25 to 31,000. Thought it was a lot of money. Asked what they have for used. Used ones are out there, and we looked at some from anywhere from 18 to a little over 20,000. One that came through is in very good shape. It's got 2,000 hours on it, which seems a lot, but in the world of forklifts, it's not. It's compact, it's small, it's good weight, does everything we're going to need for the money. This year, the year of it is 2013, but we can look at this as a purchase that it's going to be here 20 to 25 years. That's the same one that I've used at the City of Eden Prairie. They had it there about 12 years before I got there. I was there 7 years, so it's 23 years old now. They still have the same forklift. I mean, there's just nothing to go. We don't beat them to the point where they do it in industry, where they're constantly running them, so it'll be here for a long time. There was two options to look at to do this, and I'll let maybe Mike kind of take over with the financing of it.
Yeah, Gary, as he mentioned, there's a couple ways. We could buy a flat straight out. We have to amend our CIP in order to do that option, or we could just do the rent to purchase, which would require us to pay monthly payment for, I believe, 5 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in August already. And then at the beginning of the year, we pay the balance, and there's obviously a cost to that rent to purchase option, and I think it's 1% of the list price, which is about $178 a month, $179 a month. So for 5 months, it's less than $1,000. It does drive up the cost of the used one, roughly $900. But we'll just let the city council, if you're in agreement that we should be purchasing this forklift, that which method. We thought we'd just provide you with each option, and you can tell us if you're okay with going forward this year and amending the CIP, or just doing the rent to purchase option and causing us to pay slightly more, but it's still a pretty good deal.
Is the rent to purchase available on the used?
Yes, that's what it would be.
This is a used piece
Doesn't
of
have to be
equipment,
new.
yes.
This particular,
Okay.
we've got a picture of the exact unit we'd be getting, so.
Okay, and Gary, does the forklift require a spotter also? Or
No, it does not. Nope, the visibility in this is a lot better. When you're sitting in a Bobcat, the cab over it just has this little window on top. You don't get much visibility, where this one does have it has ROPS on it. It does have open grading, so you can see above your head. You can also look through the to the forks. The forks are visible at all times, at all heights.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's designed for lifting high.
Yeah. Roughly how often do you figure you use it or would use it if you had the forklift now?
we'll use it a ton. I mean, we are constantly moving stuff around in the shop, stuff off shelves. I mean, everything that we use, due to the lack of room that we have in the facility now, everything goes on shelves, so everything gets put away. I mean, we just took down we had a whole bunch of I'm trying to think, what do you call them, the delineator cones we had to use. Everything gets kind of shipped away, put up, moved on around. Signs get moved.
So daily or several times a week?
Probably weekly. We would use something like this, you know. And it's tough because during the summer it really gets hard because both of our skid steers are out on the sites. So if you come back and you need something that's on the shelf, it's like you're kind of out of luck because till the skid steer comes back, which is going to be the end of the day. But by that time you're done. You know, you've needed it, and you know.
Well, and for $18,000 to $20,000 used, you know, the lifespan that you said, but also at that dollar amount, I mean, there could easily be a workers' comp claim that would far exceed that.
And I was actually going to make a comment too, based on what he was saying. When we did our OSHA walkthrough, when we invited OSHA out, we weren't dinged on this item because we had done a job hazard analysis. And I had met with Gary, and we came up with what our action plan was to prevent an injury in the meantime. He did state that if we didn't get one, that we would need to rework our shelving so that nothing would need to be above that height. So there would be obviously a cost there, or a risk obviously with our gentlemen who are out there and or OSHA. So.
All right, any other questions or comments? Any
I would just to the other question, the financing question. If council and mayor are in agreement of doing this, I guess my thought would be that we'd amend the CIP, because I don't really see any value in paying an extra $1,000.
Right.
If we're gonna buy it, just buy it.
Yeah, that would be my comment too. My question would be, okay, where do we have the 18,000 right now?
In our CIP fund balance. That's why we always keep at least a little bit there or whatever, and then we don't spend it all the way down. It's for things, because you do have emergency purchases that come up sometimes. I don't know if this would be a urgent emergency, but it's something, it's a safety issue, obviously.
Yeah,
so.
Safety issue plus an opportunity rather than waiting, so. Okay.
And this is something, obviously, we amend the budget this year. It had been put in the 2018 CIP, knowing that we needed to get it, whether it was now or whether it was like January 1st, or whether you rent for a bit and then get it, so.
And this one became available. That is the reason. I mean, they let us demo it and try to use it here, and they've left it here now, you know, and stuff. So, you know, I mean, it's just, you know.
Right. Okay.
They'll provide all the training. So.
Right. Well, it's a safety issue too. I agree with Councilmember Thole, what she was saying. This could easily be eaten up in a workers' comp claim. So, with that, Council. Mr. Molitor, did you want to make a motion to amend the 2017 CIP purchase and the used 2013 Caterpillar for the amount of $17,895?
Sure.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Mr. Molitor made that motion and Ms. Bruce seconded that. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. So next we move on to administrative reports, and we'll start with our city administrator, Mr. Baroni.
I don't have many items. In fact, I think I have just one. I do have a meeting set up with a number of staff people to meet with Mr. Tracy Stilley, who's the loss control public safety specialist with the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust. I'm going to have him here, I think it's like a week, he is 17th, I would say about a week and a half. We're going to be discussing the security, kind of the front part of the building, more focused on the customer service area as part of the budget, I would say positive variance. I've got to get the right phrase here. We talked about doing a remodel of the front desk, but I want to have him here. Councilmember Thole, Mayor Whalen, and I heard him speak almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, at a seminar that was sponsored. That had to do with by the league, by active shooter, and what you should do to prevent things of that nature happening at your city, like what happened in New Hope a couple of years ago, where the guys showed up, started shooting people, and the cops had to kill them. We just want to avoid those kind of things. So we're going to be looking at it. He's not a builder or a contractor, so I'm not gonna be able to get a price out of him. But what I will get hopefully out of Mr. Stilley is some sort of direction of which way to go, where we're balling or where we're not. And then I can go to somebody and try to find out what would be the cost to fix or whatever. And it may not happen all at once, but hopefully we'll figure out where we're going. So good to get some expertise.
Question for you on that, Mike. I noticed that you have that now in the 2018 budget,
Correct.
whereas before I think we were talking about using it in this year. Is the thinking changed in that now to move it out to next year?
It depends on the timing.
It's just, yeah, I would agree with Mr. Grimm. It's more on the timing. So we have it in there. Hopefully we get that to happen. It could be that's when we decide to construct it. It could be still staying in 2018. If he comes in here and sounds the alarm and says, boy, you guys are really weak over here, you might want to think about it. We'd probably be back here asking you for it then. But we have that money kind of earmarked in that positive variance for this project. So it would be new funds, but existing funds, but that's kind of where we're going. So.
Okay.
That's all I have.
And we were going to also try and find a date for the official, I don't know,
That's right.
ribbon cutting for the water treatment plants.
So we need to, I don't know, christen's the right.
Right, whatever.
Ribbon cutting, whatever. So I think what I'll do is I'll send council members a email, and I'll just have you reply, not to all, but back to me on some potential dates for a ribbon cutting to dedicate the
Dedication, there you go.
water
Okay.
treatment plants. We'll probably go to one and make it good for both.
Okay.
Since we'll be doing the same thing twice, but we'll figure out a date here coming up. So.
Okay. Then City Engineer, Mr. Hornby.
Couple of project notes. Enchanted Lane is out for bids, and bid opening is on August 15th. So we'll bring that to the next available council meeting. Once we evaluate those bids, and then Halstead Drive, an update. Contractor has some ongoing erosion control they're installing. The tree clearing and grubbing occurred last week. They're pretty much done with that. And there are utilities in the process of relocating, which is why they haven't started mass excavation to date. Good news is that the one that is the biggest conflict is a communication line. It's a cable line. It actually goes right down the wheel line of the road for about 2 miles. So that's in the process. That was Frontier, and they got out on the site right away. They are already relocating that line.
So who is the holdup for utilities? Let me guess.
I did also get word from XL Energy on a section, but they're on the the east end of the project, so they have a little bit more time. And they were telling me the 3rd or 4th week of August is what they have on their schedule right now to relocate that line.
So how does that affect the project?
I think that's something a contractor can work around. I'll find out more on Thursday when we have our weekly meeting.
Okay, because we don't want to end up with the same situation as we did on the treatment plants, so we need to keep on top of it.
We are.
Yeah, we need to keep on top of it too. All right.
Paul did a little screaming, and the Frontier folks were out there today. So.
Okay, and then any update on our stormwater project over there? What is it?
Actually, that is a very good question. That'll be uploaded here in the next day or so, or sent out to quotes the next day or so. It's a quotable project.
Okay.
I made a modification. We had some discussion about whether we should bypass stormwater or not. And bypassing the stormwater would have doubled the cost of the project, and I told them to take that out of there. So we're estimating the cost. There's a quotable project, and we'll get that out to quotes here this week. And then we'll try to bring that back to the next available council meeting. Try to give the contractors 2 weeks to bid it. I've got 3 contractors who are interested in the projects.
Okay.
And qualified to do the work.
Good. All right. Community Development Director?
Yes, Madam
Mr.
Mayor. We are not having our Parks Commission meeting, but we will be having a Planning Commission meeting, so I'm just looking for someone to attend. That would be August 28th.
Okay. Mr. Molitor already attended. I think you were the July attendee. I know I've attended a couple.
I don't have my calendar on me, but I can let David know.
Okay. Otherwise, Okay.
If I'm here, I'll do it, or if I'm not already,
Okay.
if I don't have a conflict, but I neglected to bring my calendar tonight.
I actually can do it.
Okay, so Ms. Mortensen, Councilmember Mortensen will do that. Thank you.
Is
I know.
that 7 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a meeting. All right, so we'll move on to reports. Let's start at the end with Councilmember Bruce.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, I'll try and keep it brief so we don't have to change the tape. I went to the Mountain Fire Commission meeting and they adopted the 2018 budget. It went up by about 5.36% exactly.
3.05.
The increase from 2017?
That's my understanding. Was 3.05. Am I incorrect?
3.84.
Yeah, it's like 3.8 something.
Okay.
For the city, I think overall their budget.
Oh,
That's the way
okay.
that allocated.
Overall,
Yeah,
okay.
but the city's
And
portion is what we care about.
The city's portion is going to increase about 5%.
I'll have to look, Councilmember, I'm not recalling that off the top of my head, but
And that's based on their formula of
yeah.
Right.
they have a unique formula.
Right.
It's actually
Yeah.
fair.
yeah. And all that information is in your information
It's in the info
packet, so
packet.
you can peruse that, and if you have questions, let us know. I also went to the Pioneer Sarah Creek Water Management Commission meeting and met with Brian, who's taking over from Rich Bratch, and we're going to be meeting probably in September about the Whale Tail project. We also talked about a manure management ordinance with Minnetrista adopting a manure management ordinance, and I went to a field day up on Foxwood Farm just to get educated about what other properties were doing, and I've got some information on that, and I'd be glad to share that with staff. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molitor.
As I mentioned before, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and we acted on those items tonight. Also attended the LMCD. The first meeting in July was canceled. Second meeting, just mainly administrative items, nothing really major to report. So.
And they passed a budget, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was done a couple months ago.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
The WCC meeting is this Thursday at Lady of the Lake, and I was in the parade for Spirit of the Lake. It was hot, but it was it was well attended, and yeah, it was fun. We had a good time.
Participated in the Personnel Committee meeting and the Survey Committee.
Okay, so since our last meeting, I did go to the weekend softball game, and unfortunately the police lost by 1 point, but it was a good game and a fun night. And I did attend the Personnel Committee meeting on the 2nd of August. I attended the Fire Commission meeting on the 26th of July. I also was in the Spirit of the Lakes Parade, and thank you to Turk Brothers who provided us a vehicle. And also I did on August 1st, went to 7 National Night Out parties with the chief and also Dave Locke, who is the coordinator for that. And thank you to Mr. Locke for that. And it was a fun night, fun event. We had 18 parties this year, so no way we could get to all of them, but I thought 7 was really a good number. I mean, that's really moving along. So, but met many people. Also, the summer newsletter has gone out, and residents should have seen that in your mailboxes already. If you haven't had a chance to read it over, I would strongly encourage you to do so. And then just one other note, I just wanted to bring this up. We all received an email from a resident regarding legalizing golf carts. And this kind of also, when we were at National Night Out, we saw that there were a lot of golf carts out there. And they didn't just fly in and drop down, they were driven. So a lot of people are driving golf carts, and currently it's illegal in Minnetrista. So this, as you all know from the email, this resident was requesting that we consider legalizing golf carts. And so I think we should look at that because they're being used anyway, and we might as well maybe make it legal and make it safe for residents to use them. So if we could do that. You can say a few words if you want. I'm just looking to maybe put it on a future agenda.
Sure, Madam Mayor, members of council, I won't take much time here, but yes, I did see that email today for the first time.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. A lot of people in our city have golf carts. They utilize them to get their things from their house to their boat or landings or so on and so forth. Typically, it's been enforced on a complaint basis. We don't get a lot of complaints, frankly. It hasn't been an issue, but nonetheless, our ordinance does currently prohibit that because it falls under the definition of a recreational vehicle. So be happy to take a look at that and maybe see what other cities, similar cities might have.
Okay.
And bring that back at a later date.
Okay, thank you. So that is all I have with that.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. And the motion was made by Ms. Stoll and seconded by Ms. Mortensen. Thank you.